Experts in the field of synthetic biology have warned that the creation of so-called mirror life could pose an unprecedented risk to life on Earth were it to ever escape a lab. We'll talk about it. The genome of every creature on Earth has DNA that has a right-handed structure. This is because many of our biological molecules and many chemicals we interact with too have asymmetric structures. Mirrored structures can be synthesized and could even be used to create a mirrored organism. We now have the tools to synthesize all these components if we wanted to create a mirrored organism from scratch. That includes the mirrored forms of all of their structures, their proteins, their DNA. Some scientists worry that if such an organism were to get out into the world, immune systems would have no ability to perceive it. Imagine a bacteria that there are no antibiotics for, not just that, but you can't do anything to prevent its spread because our immune system is based on things that we're familiar with. At least that is the concern. And this isn't just some wild speculation. These are people who work in synthetic biology that are raising these alarm bells. And that is something that should be considered. If you're working with something that is so dangerous to life, maybe it shouldn't be done. Or perhaps it should be investigated thoroughly before we start assembling these things. Let me provide you with a slightly different perspective, though. Z-form DNA does exist in nature. No organisms use it as their genome for living creatures, and it is a little bit funkier compared to what we would consider a complete left-handed DNA, which has been synthesized, by the way. Z-DNA, a left-handed form of DNA, is used by some viruses, and our immune system does react to it with inflammation, which is one of the most basic kinds of immune system reactions. Viruses utilize kinds of DNA that we don't have, including Z-DNA and double-stranded RNA and single-stranded DNA. In the evolutionary arms race, viruses keep trying new shit. As a method of dealing with that, we undergo a process called somatic hypermutation, where our bodies essentially just throw out random code until it finds the right antibody to an antigen. If that weren't the case, viruses would have won. Occasionally, that can go very wrong, and you can end up with an autoimmune condition. It is true that our bodies have never encountered a bacteria with left-handed DNA. But it's also true that that bacteria has never encountered us. It wouldn't be able to interact with our proteins. It wouldn't be able to interact with just about anything in this world. If it were to, it would struggle to interact with anything that isn't perfectly symmetric. Things that are asymmetric, we've essentially evolved to utilize. Now, bacteria can mutate rapidly, so it might adjust. One question that I would have is, if other kinds of DNA are present, why do we have right-handed DNA for everything? I imagine that there are some structural reasons within chemicals that support right-handed DNA. Ultimately, it could be a threat, and that's kind of what the researchers are trying to say. I think that this topic has been a bit overblown.
Are eukaryotic cells more complex than the tiny prokaryotes swarming in the culture?